G'day, Clayton here from Fund Your Ideal Lifestyle, the podcast. This month is all about the actual book, Fund Your Ideal Lifestyle. It's what I spent 18 months writing from the results that I saw in my clients over a few years of managing their cash flow and seeing their improved performance, not just monetarily, but also personally and professionally. Over dozens of clients led me to walk down almost the rabbit hole, I guess you could call it, of decision fatigue, and then into cognitive minimalism, where the idea of people focusing less on money equals better results in every area of life. So that's what the book was written about. It has now been released. Last week, it hit number 1 for money management in the US and Australia, which I'm very happy about. And then in Australia, it hit sort of number 1 in self-help and then motivation as well. So I hit all the milestones I set for myself. So I'm really happy with the overall results. I was not able to hit number 1, actually, for business and personal finance in Australia due to Scott Pape, the barefoot investor. So I take my hat off to you, good sir. I was not able to usurp you. But this month, I didn't get a chance to focus on content because I was so focused on the launch. So in that case, I don't have a topic to talk about other than the book. So here is the prologue. This is the prologue of the book. It goes for about 16 minutes, and it's a really good introduction to the book. It sort of gives you a background on why I know this intersection of lifestyle and money and why you should even listen to me in the first place, and how I didn't set out to write a book, and I certainly didn't set out to learn about these topics I learnt about, but it was just the natural progression of learning about money and then sort of having this background in music and traveling the world and sort of seeing, regardless of what side of the fence someone was on, whether they'd spent all their life just focused on today and having a great time, all their life focused about tomorrow and sort of putting money aside and not doing anything but school, uni, work, I can see what part of the story each of them was missing. And so with a very unique insight, I was able to connect the dots. So the book is at the intersection of lifestyle and money, but this is the prologue and sort of sets a scene as to what's the complete and remarkable solution here, sort of taking someone who's spending too much time at work, not achieving lifestyle plans and failing to build long-term assets. And what I sort of identified as, if that's what's happening, they're kind of wasting their life. So what the goal of the book, or the purpose of the book, is a 3-step process through clarifying your ideal lifestyle, automating cash flow, and then purchasing capital assets, ultimately to help you fund your ideal lifestyle. So this is the prologue. I really hope you enjoy. Feel free to lend me some feedback and enjoy. Prologue, an amateur rock star from the end of the world. We huddle together and throw our arms around each other, not just to protect our space and keep the outside world away, but so we can hear one another speak. There's a lot going on. Crowded teenagers can be rather rowdy like that. Surrounding us are people holding cameras, people talking into headsets, and people writing on notepads, but that's none of our business at the moment. We have 5 more minutes to wade in this outrageous reality we created for ourselves over 6 years ago and want to savor it one last moment before we join the real world again. And as we stand there, sweat falling all over each other, we know we have just one thing left to do. We wait to see if the undulating sea of flesh starts screaming for an encore. It's at this moment you're at the mercy of the crowd. The fate of the night hangs on their collective reaction. If they scream for one last song, you're a rock god. If they don't, you go home a nobody. And tonight is, in fact, a very big night. It's the launch of our debut EP and, confusingly, our last show ever. As such, we hired out the largest and grandest theatrical amphitheater we could find and wheeled in the Marshall stacks. No other band had even contemplated a rock show in this venue before, and that's exactly why we did it. And as we huddled together backstage, staring at each other, a look of holy shit slowly spreads across our faces as the screaming begins. 10 seconds goes by, and then another. And then with each 10 seconds, the noise of a sold-out room full of pubescent anks crammed up against the stage keeps surging in decibels. But we're in no rush to move. Sure, there's more tension in making a crowd wait, but we're also being selfish. We're silently aware this is our goodbye, and we want to soak up the atmosphere as much as possible. Then, like a mythological creature summoned by the raucous of a room packed with adolescents, we walk back out, one by one, onto the pitch black stage. And as I walk up to my mic and stand behind it with my hands wrapped around my trusty Shure Beater 58A to begin belting out our last song for our final show ever, I turn to my really good friend and lead guitarist Matt and say, "Let's do this." And this is it. This moment right here. As the hue of the yellow stage lights fills my visual field, I count this among the top moments of my life. As I open my mouth to sing, I see for the very first time a crowd of people singing along with me. It was surreal. People I had never met, singing words I penned myself one random night in my bedroom. My art was their art. My passion, my thoughts were theirs. This moment right here was the reason I ever wanted to become an artist, to let people experience what I had created. When someone asked me what I did for work, for many years I flinched at the words cascading from my mouth, and luckily so. If I had towed the line and got on with being a cog in the system, you wouldn't be holding this book in your hands right now. I'm a financial advisor. See, the term financial advisor on the surface is a very simple idea, an advisor on financial matters. The problem is, with an overly complicated and outdated compliance regime, it's extremely time laborious to achieve a good outcome specific for each client. The inconvenient truth of the financial advice industry is this. For the average consumer, there is no chance of knowing whether purchasing financial advice will bring any value until they've paid a fee and received the advice document. And there's a reason for this. Too many people are making too much money for the finance industry to change. The good news, however, is a quiet subculture of financial advisors have splintered off, not interested in how things were, but interested in what they can be. What we're now seeing on the fringes of the industry is people receiving life-changing advice, not just in how they get the most out of their money, but how to get the most out of their life. Being far more inspired to follow this beat of the drum, I set my mind to creating a service to manage my clients' cash flow. What started out as an exercise in the benefits of positive restraint blossomed into a full lifestyle and finance management framework centered around helping my clients discover what they wanted out of life and how do they use their money to achieve it. Or to summarize, how they could fund their ideal lifestyle. But before we dip into this 3-step process on how to achieve the outcome, let's look at the environment which prompted this type of advice to evolve and why viewing personal finance in the same way now as 20 years ago fails to solve the problems of modern day life. Wanting to learn more about my clients, I surveyed the 25 to 40-year-olds as to what they wanted out of life and what they wanted to avoid. I expected the results to reflect everything I'd ever read about Gen X and Y wanting to be rich, retire on a passive income, kick up the heels, and go traveling around the world. The results, however, did not reflect that expectation. Instead of early retirement, people wanted job satisfaction. Instead of getting rich, people wanted more time. Instead of perpetual travel, people wanted to show something for their hard work. I was amazed at the findings. Had I been lied to, or had no one simply done what I had done, gone to the demographic and asked? What I realized is that over the last 20 years, a lot has changed. In fact, that's an understatement. Everything has changed. The baby boomers grew up with parents from a war-torn era. They were taught that safety and security were purchased through the ownership of assets. And that's what the baby boomers did. They bought, from homes to cars to fancy appliances. Ownership represented security and freedom. Gen Y and millennials, on the other hand, have grown up in an economy of exponential growth over the last 25 years. The concept of scarcity and the corresponding need to gather and own things has largely become an anachronism. Add in the boom for technology to facilitate this sharing economy, and we now have the concept of ownership moving from the domain of security to the realm of responsibility. Why own a car when Uber can pick me up from anywhere that I am and take me anywhere I want to go? I don't have to find parking. I don't have to own a depreciating asset. I don't even need to worry about sobriety. More convenience for a lower cost. Where do I sign? The idea of access over ownership has been a massive shift in the way that we interact with the world. And to that end, if you're under 30, there's a good chance you're with the majority and no longer think you'll ever own a property. Ownership takes time, it takes hard work, and it removes instant gratification. And there is so much to be instantly gratified by these days. Whether you Tinder your way through a weekend, Netflix binge your new favorite series, or stream your new album on Spotify, whatever you want these days, you can have it immediately. The problem is, these new services come with a time cost, and despite the incredible complexity of our neocortex to create fully functioning and mostly rational humans, we still haven't outpaced our 200,000-year history. Simply put, our brain is not meant to deal with so many things competing for our attention. Even just a couple of 100 years ago, there were only a couple of things to consider. A, is there food? B, is there water? C, is there shelter? If all three were checked, you were good. These days, our tick boxes are a lot more complicated. Does your boss like you? Did you choose the right career path? Is there kale in my green smoothie? Our brains are so exhausted by these open-loop questions that when you add in the fact that we are working longer than ever and filling every other second with a social media hit, it's no wonder we're under the pump. Our brains no longer have time to relax. But being constantly interrupted with distractions is modern-day life, and you can't avoid it. And saying, let's go back to the old days when life was better is redundant advice. Instead, you adapt, create shortcuts, and get big results from little changes. Research tells us that all these distractions and interruptions creates a burden on us to make decisions. And each of those decisions saps you of your ability to make good decisions. It's called decision fatigue and explains why over the course of the day, your decisions get worse. Judges make worse decisions in the afternoon compared to the morning. People buy useless extras at car dealerships. And we are susceptible to impulse purchases at the checkout. Therefore, the lower amount of decisions you make, the higher quality decisions you end up making. So when the results of the survey I conducted came back, I realized what people needed wasn't just a budget to manage their money, but a system to manage modern day life. With so many things competing for our attention, how is it even possible to make the best decisions? What I found was the more decisions were removed from the individual, the better the outcomes were being achieved in every other area of life, from relationships to career, and of course, financial. Once our minds are free from the pressure of having to handle every single distraction and interruption, we end up making better decisions in every other area of our lives. By creating cognitive minimalism, we can start focusing on what we should be giving our attention to, performing better at our jobs, making time with family, and finding new experiences. I don't know when my rent is paid, how much I have for my next holiday, or whether my long-term asset base is getting larger. All that I know is it is. Now, before we go any further, in order to understand why I have anything to say about lifestyle, you first have to understand my background. Before my band of amateur rock stars and I descended upon the New South Wales Central Coast, we grew up in a tiny but beautiful coastal town of 6,000 people called Nambucca Heads. Now, when describing Nambucca Heads, the two most common phrases are A, oh, that place just south of Coffs Harbour, and B, never heard of it. It's where old people go to die, young people escape to live, and middle-aged people who prefer to drive in the slow lane think they've hit the jackpot. When you grow up in a small town like Nambucca Heads, there are a couple of sets of unspoken rules. The first set of rules is dictated by the kids themselves, and it goes something like this. First rule is, you have to surf. If you don't surf, you have no social life, period. The second is, if you can't surf, you better be able to skate. Third is, if you can't surf or skate, hang around in the background on a BMX bike, and absolutely no one rollerblades. The other set of rules are dictated by the adults, and it goes something like this. You can be whatever you want. So instead of real opportunity, hope gets delivered straight to the brain like some cranial IV drip. And I understand why. If you can't offer your children much by way of social advantages like the right schools and the right network, the next best thing you can do is offer them self-belief. In one sense, it's sweet and beautiful, and in the other, it's rather debilitating. Ultimate choice equals ultimate prison. The overwhelming pressure of unlimited choice requires skills a young adult or child don't really have. And after many years of mulling over unlimited opportunity, I realized how disenfranchising it is. As Barry Schwartz's book, The Paradox of Choice puts it, the more options you consider, the more buyer's regret you'll have. And the more opportunities you encounter, the less fulfilling your outcome will be. So being told you can be anything you want sounds amazing, but unlimited options without direction is an overdose of free will. Think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where there were just too many options and you just decided not to bother? When the sheer amount of choices in life is anything you want, the most common and easiest response is often not to make a decision at all. And watching many of my friends growing up succumb to this pressure, I learned early on that any decision was better than no decision at all. You can always improve things as you get going, but you can't improve things if you never make progress whatsoever. All this brings me to my intersection of money and lifestyle. While everything I've done professionally over the last decade has to do with money, that's not what motivates me. I'm not a money guy. I'm actually a lifestyle guy. Navigating the smorgasbord of options in life to come out with clarity is what I've been doing since I was a child growing up in Nambucca Heads, and living a carefree lifestyle of an amateur rock star into my early 20s taught me a lot about the pleasures of achieving what you want out of life. But again, this book is not just about doing whatever you want. Typically, books around enjoying a better lifestyle miss the giant elephant in the room, and that is, what about your future? This book is designed to give you real-world, implementable solutions so you don't end up with a massive credit card bill or a lack of options in retirement. And this book is not about sticking your head in the clouds and ignoring your financial future. Making sure your financial future is taken care of is just as important as enjoying your life today. And of course, I want to achieve all of this with minimal effort, minimal decisions, and with all the advantages afforded to me. And will it include missing your daily coffee or buying a cheaper laundry powder? The answer, thankfully, is no. Unlike most people who talk on budgeting, I have spent the last few years implementing this for clients, and I've seen their outcomes. To get the best results from your money, know what you're working towards, have automation do all the heavy lifting, and you don't think about any of it. When I was 16, I wanted to be a rich rock star and live an awesome, exciting life. At 22, I wanted to be a rich entrepreneur and live an awesome, exciting life. At 32, I realized it wasn't how much money I had or how important my title was. What I really wanted, and what most people want, is to live an awesome and exciting life. That, then, is the story I wish to tell in this book. The idea that you can ask yourself the right questions about what your ideal lifestyle looks like and use the right tips on how to manage your cash flow. You too can learn how to decide what you want out of life and how to go about funding it. So having spent my entire life trying to figure out how to get the most out of it and having a professional skill set devoted to the management of money, I decided to tackle the problem of modern day life by questioning these three basic premises. 1. Is making a decision in life better than perpetually living in an open loop, even at the risk of not achieving the best outcome? 2. Does automating regular daily financial decisions reduce distractions and decision fatigue? 3. How can someone easily invest, taking as many advantages as possible with little to no knowledge? So if you've stuck with me so far, my best bet is you're asking yourself how to achieve all of this. Great, let's get to it. The 3-step framework centers around the 3 C's. C is for clarify. Clarifying your ideal lifestyle is the first thing you have to do before you even think about money. It replaces scatterbrained strategies such as make more money or grow a property portfolio with what is my purpose in life and how do I spend more time working from there. Once you have spent the time to understand yourself, you will have the direction you need to fund your ideal lifestyle now and in the future. C is for cash flow. Organizing your cash flow and automating it replaces you at the center of your financial life. It removes the premise that because you have the skills to make money, you also have the skills to allocate it effectively. Go from overspending to getting ahead with a strategy that you can implement and automate within 24 hours. C is for capital. Purchasing capital assets breaks the assumption of investing without a plan. It is written precisely to achieve what investing is meant to do: acquire the most amount of money to pay yourself an income when you no longer work. We'll tackle the cliches around why people buy certain assets, whether it's because they have an emotional attachment to a type of investment or because they think it's exciting. It's written to take advantage of the rule of law without taking on extra risk. And what does this book not cover? This book was not written to convince you to invest in any particular asset class like real estate, stocks, commodities, or options. Speculating is a mug's game, and a mug I am not. You're fighting over scraps at the table with that kind of talk. And this book is not a secret code on how to travel the world by pulling in record numbers of cash. What this book will do is give you the tools to take whatever situation you're in right now and help you make the most out of it. Squeeze as much possibility and opportunity from it as possible. I've noticed those with possibility and opportunity are not only happier, but find themselves in better circumstances. As such, this is my expose on how to buy time, find new experiences, and keep more of what you work for. Let's do this.